one's from our friend Susan Speakman, because I do think this is kind of a good point. And she writes, regarding Facebook, how do we counter the casual contempt from personal friends on the left who are constantly referring to Rethuglicans, Repuklicans, pukes, and the like, and who are constantly posting derogatory and usually untrue stories from the far left sites? When called out, their response is usually, "Oh, of course, I don't mean you. It's all those other mouth-breathing, knuckle-dragging, gun-toting, abortion-hating cretins that I'm talking about." And they don't even realize how intolerant they are, or how I just tell myself to smile and ignore it. And I'm really getting fed up, but I refuse to let these folks chase me from Facebook. Any thoughts on a few killer snappy comebacks? And unfriending is sometimes not an option. There's a lot to say about that. First thing I want to say about that is goes to the whole Rethuglican thing. We do it too, and you'll see Democrats or Democrats with rats, emphasize. It's just fifth grade stuff, and it's unbecoming. Difference between us and them is that we have actual genuine complaints that we can make against them. So that's number one. I just find it demeaning. I'd prefer if it was all on their side, but it's certainly not. Back when we started blogging, it broke down into two camps. It was wingnuts and moonbats, and I haven't heard those terms in quite a while. But we were the wingnuts and they were the moonbats, which I kind of miss, actually. But they actually, there's a really deep point in here. What do they do about who are constantly posting derogatory and usually untrue stories from far left sites? And when you call them out, the response is, "Well, I'm not talking about you. Obviously, I'm talking about all the rest of the Republicans." This is one of the things that has been my real wake-up call, and it's actually an extremely hopeful sign. I picked it up first when I went to I think it was the University of Toronto before Oberlin. Those two were very close together, and they're very, very liberal. And I got interviewed by the Toronto Star, and this woman, talks and asked me some questions, and apparently she was just amazed that I didn't say they should just take poor people and grind them up for fertilizer and all the rest of it. And she said, "You actually seem pretty reasonable." She goes, I'd never met a Republican before. And at first I was like momentarily surprised, and then I wasn't. It's like, no, of course you haven't. All you've met is the caricatures of us that have been put out by the mainstream media or put out by the pop culture or put out by politicians. And that's when I realized that the first mission, if you're going to go to someplace like Oberlin or any kind of a college really, is that rather than introducing them to conservative principles, the first thing you have to do is convince them that you're a human being and convince them you actually do care about these things and you care about these people. Because now they don't have any moral high ground over you. Now they have to actually listen to you. And then you can just simply say, "Listen, I think I care more about poor people than you do." How can you say that? Because your policies have enslaved them for 50 years and given them this horrific murder rate and this horrific dropout rate and given this horrific crime rate. Are you happy with it? Are any liberals happy with the state of Black America today? Are any black people happy with the state of Black America? I don't think anybody will answer yes to that. Well, it's been run by Democrats for 50 years, 60 years, half a century, 3/4 of a century. Let's try something that works, which used to work before you guys came along. And next thing you know, you're talking about Booker T. Washington, and then they have to listen because they tell that you care. This is one thing that we're not very good at. We don't talk about emotion much, and we don't talk about emotion, I think, mostly because the left uses emotion to cheat, and we feel it's somehow a little unseemly. But if you can't make an emotional connection with people, you'll just never win. If it comes down to voting for a friend or voting for a pamphlet, they'll take the friend. So there's this giant caricature. I will tell you this. Again, this is not 100%, Susan, but I'll bet it's 80-20, and it might be 90-10. We are much more tolerant of their positions than they are of ours. They just don't. And the reason is, we hear their positions every day. We hear it every day. Hear it on the news. We hear it from the president. We hear it from the press. We hear it from late night comics. We hear it from Lady Gaga. We hear it from George Clooney and Matt Damon. We hear it all the time. And they never hear this stuff. And when they hear it, especially when they hear it produced in a logical way, they just have this cognitive dissonance and they tune out, which is why I think the Hillary thing might do a little business, because in 30 seconds, it's over. It's the same thing with the atomic bomb movie, that video. That took 17 minutes. But when you're done, it's over. When you're done, it's over. There's not a discussion left to be had. The ground has just been pulverized. It's just, when you're quoting the emperor and you're quoting the head of the guy who launched the raid on Pearl Harbor, you're not quoting some warmongering Southern Baptist. You're talking about the people who actually had to fight this battle. It's over. And likewise, the first 90 seconds takes me 93 seconds to show you, here's the law, here it is, see it, everybody read it, here's the highlighted parts in red, here's what Hillary Clinton said, here's what the director of the FBI said in terms of evidence. 1 conviction, 2 convictions, 3 convictions, done. So they are a lot more sensitive to it, Susan. They are a lot more threatened by it. And also, I think this is a fair statement too. Generally speaking, conservatives have a lot of things going on in their lives. A lot of conservatives have religion. A lot of conservatives are really into their hobbies. A lot of conservatives work very hard and enjoy the work they do, and they're far more active in charities and all the rest of it. And really, for the left, there is no religion except for politics, and there really is no job except for politics, and there's no joy in life except for this glittering future, which is just around the corner if we could just get rid of those last few wreckers and blockers and knuckle-dragging conservatives who are stopping paradise on earth with their ridiculous claims for individual freedom and protections of a republic and all the rest of it. They are just so politically wired that it makes sense, right? I mean, the reason they don't like capitalism and the reason they hate corporations is because a corporation is successful. A corporation delivers. You have to work hard if you work for a successful corporation. They don't want to work hard, and they're probably not smart enough. So what they want to do is they want to have other people work hard, get that rich person, that 1%er of that corporation, that evil corporation that has all the money, take the money from them and take the services as well. We really want to strip away all of Exxon's profits and distribute them to us. And parenthetically, keep the gas coming. So we don't have to do any of that. So we don't have to fight as dirty as they do. And so my experience has been that the number of people who cut off lifelong friendships over politics is probably 8 or 9 to 1 progressives cutting off conservatives. They're a lot less tolerant than we are. And of course, that's some more of the projection they do. They claim that we're just so intolerant. We listen to them every day. Every time it comes to hear us, they just literally, I've seen one student walked out of I think it was a Milo thing I saw not too long ago, where Milo was just saying some things, and literally, this kid was literally had his hands over his ears like this, and he was walking out that way so that he wouldn't have to hear it. Somebody here just CFR gifted actual, CSR gifted actual. I think I know who that might be. Said you win against the left by giving sub-zero cares about what people think. This is the point that the Gold Star Republicans that we talked about earlier could not and will not and probably never will get through their heads. You can agree with the left all you want to. They will not like you, and they will not treat you fairly. In 2012, in order to show the left how reasonable we were and unracist and swell and great guys, we said, okay, if you want to have 4 debate moderators who are all giant left-wingers, that's fine with us, sure, absolutely. We don't want to appear, ideologues or anything. We don't want to look like, we're looking for trouble. So all 4 of them were hosted by liberals, and I genuinely believe Candy Crowley saved the election for Barack Obama. I really do believe it. There's that. And then I think finally, you say I'm really getting fed up, but I refuse to let folks chase me from Facebook. Good for you. That's the plan. And the plan is to do that. By the way, just back to what we were talking about a second ago, somebody else mentioned Milo and how aggressive and in their face Milo is. Milo is so dangerous to them, and it's such a powerful weapon on our side because he not only immediately destroys one of their heartfelt narratives. Milo would be an effective political force if he never said a word. If he never got political at all. If he was let's say he was just a publicity guy or a marketing student, or let's say he was a med student, and he's studying medical school. And if you saw Milo, and Milo came out and says, yes, I'm a gay man, and I'm British, and I'm gay, and I'm well-educated, and I'm a Republican, that alone is very damaging. But when you get a guy like Milo out there and draws the pistols and starts shooting at these guys openly, saying feminism is a mental order, it's like worse than cancer. It got voted worse than cancer. I did a Facebook poll. Which do you think is worse, feminism or cancer? And feminism won. That's anathema to them, because everything they believe is part of a story. The gays are, if you're not a Democrat, then you're not really gay. If you're not a Democrat, you're not really black. And if you're not a Democrat, you're not really a woman. They try to take your entire identity away from you. It's not even that we disagree. This is the progressive position. It's not that we disagree with you. It's just that if you're a black person who comes out in favor of conservatives, you're not black. You have no business talking about black issues, because you can't be black and be a conservative. So this is why people like that are so valuable. Tammy Bruce, lesbian, former LA director of National Organization for Women, huge progressive. Now she's a conservative warrior. She has the ability to destroy these narratives because she was one of them, and she's turned, and it's extremely powerful. And on some level, I'm very careful. I'm very reluctant to say anything that's genuinely self-serving, but on some level, it takes probably a little more courage to do what I do, because everything is made into this politically correct victimhood and race wars and so on. So even though Alfonso gets a lot of hate that I don't get in terms of being a traitor to his race and to his class and all the rest of it, he's not a traitor to his race. He's a human being. He's an American. He's proud to be an American. He's a talented guy and so on. But he gets a lot of flack for that. But he is also some degree protected by that, and so is Tammy, and so is Milo. Just having the left criticize them for what they say is in a way making the critic rather, in violation of his own rules. You're attacking a gay man. Being a white male, I don't get any protection at all. And I just realized real early in this Obama thing, I just realized that it doesn't matter if you treat them fairly. It's not like they're going to treat you well. It's not like they're going to say, okay, well, that's a good point. If you say, we're willing to do two moderators who are liberals, if you do two are conservatives, and they don't suddenly just go, wow, what a swell guy. They just think you're an idiot, and they knife you. They just knife you in the back. They're not very nice people as a general rule. And every time I meet like a real liberal warrior, like a Bill Maher or a Michael Moore, the first thing I want to ask these guys is, tell me about your parents. Tell me about your mom, and tell me about your dad. That's the first thing I want to ask guys like Hicks and Patton Oswalt and Sarah Silverman, all of them. Tell me about your parents, because I'd be willing to bet you that most of them are just really dealing with tremendous rage at their parents, which they're translating into authority, and they're translating it against the main culture, which is us. So, I don't think I don't think snappy comebacks is really it, Susan. The evidence is kind of a nice thing to have, and the kind of evidence that I think is, after having done this for 8 years in videos, I think the kind of evidence that's the most powerful is not the evidence that's intellectual evidence. It's the moral evidence. It's the moral evidence. When somebody accuses you of Islamophobia and wants to make you out to be a bigot, and you say, why are you defending the religion that murders homosexuals by hanging them on construction cranes, and why are you defending the religion that puts women in movable tents and throws acid on them? And here's a picture of your Muslims stoning this woman to death. I'm not saying all Muslims do that, but it's ridiculous to say that it doesn't happen and that's not a coordinating factor. And now they've got they don't get to stand, because I'm calling them racist and I'm calling them prejudiced, because they are. And they're not just prejudiced because they're attacking conservatives. We can take that, but they really are. You guys are defending a system that is antithetical to everything you believe, more than it is to what we believe. Good Christian family man and good Christian woman, and the typical conservatives from Iowa are the most liked people by these Muslim fundamentalists. They'd be perfectly willing to let them live as dhimmis and pay a little extra tax and not have the same legal status as actual people, but they have no desire to eliminate those people. They're children of the book, I think is a term they use in Islam. They're descended from the Abrahamic tradition, along with the Jewish religion, the Christian religion, and the Muslim religion, all descended from the same physical ancestors, and so they look at that as, it's not nearly as good as being a Muslim, but it's better than being a godless atheist or a homosexual or a woman, for God's sake. I just like to have I don't want these people to get hurt. I just like them to have enough of an experience to snap them out of it. I'd like one of these feminists to argue about how awesome Iran is, and deal with it in a way where the Iranians weren't playing for a Western audience. Where if this woman just starts talking and gets into a debate, and this guy just turns to her and says, "Silence." What? Silence. You're a woman. Your opinion means nothing. Shut up. Be quiet. Don't make me strike you, because I will. Now shut up while the men talk. I just want them to have that experience. That's all I want. I want them to have that experience. I want them to understand what we understand, just how horrible these people are. These people that want socialism, I don't want them to die. I don't want to hurt them. I just want them to live under socialism for 5 months, 6 months. I want them to live under it long enough so that it goes beyond being an annoyance and then goes beyond being a drudgery and an ordeal. I want them to live under it long enough, just long enough for them to feel that there's no hope, that this is not just a week at band camp, that this is it, and that'll be the end of it. They would never argue these things again. They're just not confronted with the evidence. They don't have to confront the evidence because people like our soldiers and sailors and airmen, Marines and Coast Guardsmen and women have done such a remarkable job of protecting this little Disneyland bubble called the United States of America that you can afford to be this stupid. You don't have any evidence that things are bad out there. That's why I showed a couple of those clips. And in that Guns Islam and Orlando Guns and Islam video, I showed people being thrown off of buildings and I showed women being stoned to death, but I showed nothing like what I could have shown. Some of these beheadings or burning people or drowning them, they need to be seen. They need to be seen, and we're not doing anybody any favors by sanitizing this. Children don't need to see it. That's why they should be able to remain children. I don't need to shove this down children's throats. Every time I see children in any kind of a political argument, usually on the left, but not completely on the left, it's appalling to me. Let them be kids. They don't care. And if you have a kid holding up a sign that's saying she's pro-life and she's 4 years old, or pro-choice and she's 4 years old, then you're abusing that kid. You're just making her into a prop. So anyway, as far as the unfriending goes, I know there's some people you can't unfriend. They may unfriend you. I've got to get out of this habit of saying I said this before. It was really genuinely sad, though. It really was really sad. And this is a direct answer to your question, Susan, in terms of what do you do. I had 3 nephews and a niece. And they were the kids of my cousin, and so they weren't nephews and nieces. I'm sorry, they were second cousins. But I treated them really well, and they were really well off and been born well off. The father had done really well and worked hard and made some money. And so these kids were not really hurting for anything, but I was hurting for stuff. When I was 30 years old, I was really on a tight budget. And I bought them like telescopes and the plasma balls and stuff, and I just loved these kids. And they'd make me come in and tell them stories, and I just invent these science fiction stories out of thin air and just talk to them for an hour or two and include them as characters in it, and all the rest. Went out and made rockets and launched rockets and all the rest of it. So, yes, you still get the fleece. And thank you very much, Chuck. Chaotic Runes, maybe? Yeah, Chaotic Runes. Anyway, so I really thought a lot of these kids, and they thought a lot of me. And then I would go to this house for Thanksgiving, and then my Aunt Marty decided that, she was just getting a little old, so it kind of went down, got passed down to this family, and they had a beautiful house, and I would go to Thanksgiving, and it was a real important thing for me because I didn't get to see my family much. Everybody's back east. And then I think about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, I noticed that something had changed. And I had a pretty good idea what it was. It's a very liberal family. And I know they're a liberal family. Doesn't make me feel any differently about them. And I certainly am not there to discuss politics. I'm there with the family. But to answer your question specifically, Susan, it happened to me twice, and then it happened to me a third time. First time they were just kind of taking shots, just kind of pot shots, and started out jokingly, and then it got a little more serious. But the last time I was there, I was sitting out back with one of these kids who I'd just given so much time and attention to and had done so much for, and who I'd been so close to. And he can't even look at me because I'm a conservative and I'm promoting all these evil, awful, unspeakable ideas like individual freedom and responsibility and all the rest. And then, by weird coincidence, it was the night when the Trayvon Martin ruling came in, when they found Zimmerman not guilty. And they're all just screaming and throwing up their hands and talking about what an injustice is and how everybody they're just murdering black people on the streets and what's happened to this Nazi country. And I don't say boo. I don't say boo. I don't say anything. I don't care about getting into an argument with my family. I'm just not going to do it. But as the night went on and people had more to drink, they came over and then they just started poking me. And my cousin said about this kid who I'd spent so much time with, and said, he said, Time Magazine was an okay magazine until the Republicans bought it and then effed it up. And she didn't say effed it up. And I'm sitting out here outside this fire in Pennsylvania in November, out in the backyard there, and I'm wondering, why are you poking me with this? Why? And I realize it's because they have to. Because they knew I was smart and they knew I was good, and if I was smart and good and disagreed with them, then their airtight worldview may have a flaw. And so I had to be demonized. And this kid wouldn't give me the time of day. He wouldn't give me the time of day. And spent the whole night just dropping little under the breath kind of things. And so to answer your question, third time I've said of answering your question, Susan, I had 3 individual choices I could make there. One choice would be to just swallow it and just do what I did, just swallow it. And I didn't want to swallow it. I was too hurt and too offended by it, so I wasn't going to swallow it. The second choice, which was tempting, was to draw my pistols and just smoke them. You want to? I'm not here talking politics. I'm not saying a word about politics. I'm not here. But if you want to talk, if you will not let me go, then here comes the artillery barrage. Now what do you think? You son of a bitch. That was an option too, and I didn't want that option either. So I took the third option, which is I just don't go back there. I don't go back. I haven't been there in 4 years, 5. I don't get to go to Thanksgiving with my family anymore, not because I go there and become Mr. Politics, and not because I go there and try to convert people. I go there just to be with my family. I go there with my guns in the car. I do not go in there to argue, and even though I'm taunted and provoked, I won't do it. I finally got to the point where the provocation and the taunting was so extreme, I just decided, well, I'm not going to continue to take it. I'm just not, and I'm not going to leave with this giant showdown. I'm just going to leave. And there you go. So it's a shame, and I do wish I could have a chance to talk to that second cousin one-on-one and not in front of people, because I wouldn't gently persuade him to come to the light. I'd blow his frickin' doors off him. I'd blow his doors off him. I'd make him defend every one of his positions. I've been through this before. I keep waiting for the big liberal Goliath. He's not out there because he doesn't exist. The argument doesn't exist. And I would take him to pieces. To pieces. This is the smartest kid I've ever seen, by the way, ever. And I said, so, you've got an IQ of 160 probably, and you're this stupid? Maybe you want to look at this. Colin, maybe you want to look at this. Maybe the fact that you could be this wrong about so many things is something you might want to look at in terms of your serious work in science, because if you have these kind of blind spots politically, you have these kind of blind spots scientifically as well, and you'd probably do better work if you were more aware of it, and spent more time trying to get a little humility and listen to people and not prejudge them, and just listen, because if it turns out you're right, and this is the argument too, Susan, right? It's like I run into this argument all the time with these people. They're always, I've been on a number of dates out here that were just terrific dates. I had a great time. I can't wait to see you again. They're saying, oh, wonderful, you're the nicest guy I ever met. You just had so much fun. It was wonderful. And then they see a video, and they say, I can't see you again. I could never introduce you to my friends, or, I know you said you were conservative, but I mean, some of these things that you've put in your videos are just really, offensive. What's offensive about it? Well, you attacked Barack Obama. I said, yeah, so where am I wrong? And just they can't take it, and I don't need to be around people like that, but I really do find just how unbelievably arrogant they are, and I was.